Well, we had an interesting week, didn't we, weather-wise? Some tornadoes hit this week, kind of out of nowhere, out of the clear blue, and want to let you know that we have some of our family that's at New Journey Church in Knoxville. Some of our guys worked at the Vermeer Corporation where a lot of those tornadoes hit, and they're okay, but wondering what they're going to do about their jobs. So be in prayer for them, would you, this week, and for everybody else that was struck in Marshalltown and all the other areas that were affected by those tornadoes. But aside from catastrophic and crazy weather, have you enjoyed the weather that we've had the last week and a half? Man, hasn't it been awesome? I mean, 80 degrees and no humidity. It's like the weather that we should have had in June, but July still decided to come in June and July, and what are you going to do? But on the way to, and I've loved it. I really enjoyed it. I don't really like hot weather, and so this has been amazing, and I've tried to take advantage of it. And the other day I was driving to Des Moines, and I was kind of in one of those, it just kind of caught me, or the thought hit me as I was driving, and I'm looking around, I'm like, man, summer in Iowa is just beautiful. I mean, the trees are in bloom, and the corn is tall, and the corn is green right now, and the vegetable gardens are starting to ripen, and my favorite part of the summer BLT season is coming soon. I'm super excited about that. Kids are playing outside. It's just, you just look around, and I was just struck by the beauty of summer. And I love summer. And how many of you are in the same place where you're just loving summer right now? I want to let you know that you shouldn't get too comfortable, because in 16 weeks, this is coming. It's coming. It's coming. In 16 weeks, so enjoy summer while you can. Now, it's not that I don't like winter, it's just that I hate winter. I don't hate everything about winter. There's things that don't really bother me, like snow doesn't really bother me that much, and part of the reason that snow doesn't bother me that much is I have a 13-year-old, 5'5" redheaded snowblower, and so that's not an issue anymore. And maybe you're like, oh man, I gotta get me one of those. They're really expensive, so you might be better off. So snow is not an issue. Even the cold, which is annoying, and after you've been about the middle of January or February, you're like, oh man, I wish I'd get rid of it. I don't even so much mind the cold. I mean, I bought a pair of long johns at Costco this year, and I got a space heater, so the cold isn't really that big of an issue for me either. And it's not even that the plants die and the trees lose their leaves and the landscape, when it gets to that point where it's just kind of, there's no snow, so it's just kind of brown and ugly. I don't love that, but it doesn't bother me that much. It's not even the fact that they put so much salt and sand on the roads that not only are the outsides of our cars completely a mess all winter, but our inside of our cars are a mess too. That doesn't even bother me so much. I mean, these things aren't enough for me to just want to, wave the white flag and go to Arizona. It's not that. But there is one thing that does. One thing that drives me bananas about winter. One thing I hate about winter, and that is the darkness. I do not like the fact that, when it's summer, it's 9 p.m., and I am I just have boundless energy in the summer, and I feel like Superman. I get my power from the sun or something. Because at 9 o'clock, I'm just yeah, I'm still feeling good. I'm ready to go. I got a good 3-4 hours left in me. I could work all day, and then I could come home and do a house project, and I'm still ready to go, until midnight. I'm good to go. I don't know if you guys are like that, but that's how I feel in the summer. In the winter, it's 5 o'clock, and the sun sets as you're coming home, and by 6, I'm ready to hit the hay. I'm spent, That's it. The darkness just kind of saps my energy. And it's not just the short days even in the winter. It's it's not just when you get up and the sun's not up, and then you come home and the sun's already down, and so you don't really get a chance to be outside. It's also the fact that, you ever notice it's super cloudy in the winter? And there's a really scientific explanation, but I don't want to take the time to explain it today. But for whatever reason, well, I know the reason, but again, I'm not going to take time to explain it because it's long and heady, and it bored me, so I thought it would bore you too. It's really cloudy in the winter. And so even on the times when you do get to spend some time outside, or even if it is a halfway nice day, the sun's hidden under clouds what seems like for weeks, and you don't get to see it anyway. And so you kind of get in this place where you're just kind of blah, sometimes in the winter it can kind of get you down. There's actually a name for it, and some people really suffer from a depression that happens in the winter, and there's a name for it. It's called seasonal hold on, I got to find it. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD for short. Seasonal affective disorder. And one of the therapies used to treat seasonal depression, or this seasonal affective disorder, where people really get down in times like the winter or sometimes in the fall, is light therapy. Like they take a certain light, and my wife has one of these lights, and you sit underneath it. How long do you sit under? Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour? I don't know. But anyway, you take one of these lights and you just sit underneath it for a while, and it's supposed to help your seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. So it's light therapy. Interesting, I don't really use it. I tried it once, it was super bright, and I didn't like it, so I'll just sit and complain to you guys. It seems like better therapy for me. Anyway, I'll just sit and talk about it. But what is it about light? Have you ever noticed that we're predisposed from birth to want to be around light, and we kind of crave it, don't we, in a way? Why is it that children are afraid of the dark? You ever notice that? Or maybe some of you adults are still afraid of the dark. Why do so many crimes happen at night? I think it's because we're created in God's image. And according to 1 John 1:5, God is light. God is light. Think about the first words that God spoke in the book of Genesis. He said, "Let there be," and then he said, "Let there be Reese's peanut butter cups," and it was good, right? Amen. But yeah, he said, "Let there be light." That was the first words that God spoke back in Genesis. And not only is God light, but the fact that we were created in his image means that we are light bearers, or God asks us specifically to be light. If we look in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, this is where we're going to hang our hat this morning. This is a little excerpt from a sermon that Jesus preached that's very famous, called the Sermon on the Mount. That was Jesus. He was up on the side of a hilltop or a mountain, and he started speaking. And part of his sermon, this is a little excerpt from it, he said to the people that were sitting there as he was teaching them, who were his followers, or some were disciples, some were seekers, but he said, "You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden." So he calls us light. He says, "You are light. You're the light of the world." Did you know that you're supposed to be light? Maybe you did. But maybe the question that comes to your mind is, well, what does that mean, Pastor Jared? What does it mean to be light? And that's a good question. And the short answer to that, we're going to explore a deeper understanding of what light is today, or what it means. But the short answer is it means living out your faith in the world around you. But a couple of things I want to, before we really jump into things today, that I want to make you aware of. Number one, as we look at this verse, he said, "You are the light of the world," right? That means that the faith that we have, that we are to live out, is for the world. It's not necessarily just for our family. It's not to hang out with a bunch of Christians. It's for the world. It's for those who specifically don't know who the Lord is, or who don't know who Jesus is. He tells us also in the second part that light is not to be hidden under a basket. Maybe you sang the song when you were a kid, "Hide it under a bushel." No, I'm going to let it shine. Remember that? I can't sing like Pastor Barry, so I'm not going to. He gets to waste like a minute or two in his sermons every time because he can sing, and I can't, so I just have to explain it, but that's all right. I have other talents. Anyway, you just you hide that. He says, don't hide it. You wouldn't light a light and hide it, or take a lamp and put it under a basket on the floor. No, you take a light and you put it on a stand so that everything in the room can be illuminated and everybody can see it. And so your faith isn't meant to be hidden from the world. It's not something that's just supposed to stay between you and Jesus. It was meant to spread beyond you. It was meant to overflow onto the world that's around you. Because when Jesus said, "You are light," he meant for it to reach other people, specifically people who don't know Jesus. Now, I was on vacation, and while I was on vacation, I was sitting down with my father-in-law, and we were watching this program with a couple of magicians called Penn and Teller. You might be familiar with them. They have a show called Fooled, where magicians try to fool them. And I saw this clip, and I thought it related this morning, so I wanted you to check it out.
I asked a close personal friend of Penn and Teller to sneak in and steal it. I mean, how cool would it be to fool Penn and Teller with their own trick? So he agreed, he got it, and he's willing to talk me through the trick via video conference, just as long as I hide his identity. So if we can connect with the mysterious friend of Penn and Teller.
All right, so I stand here, and my identity is hidden. No one knows who I am.
No one can see you.
Good. You blurred me out. All right.
Yeah.
I stole this trick from Penn and Teller, and because they've got lousy security.
Okay. So the joke there is, I hope you got it. The joke there is, it doesn't matter if you blur that guy's face out. It doesn't matter if you put the most amazing mask or disguise on, even like those Mission Impossible masks where they become someone else. It doesn't matter if you put that on him, because as soon as that guy opens his mouth, we know it's who. It's Gilbert Gottfried, right? It's Gilbert Gottfried. It's the Aflac duck guy, right? He can't not open his mouth. He has such a distinct voice that it doesn't matter what you put in, what disguise you put in. You would know beyond a shadow of a doubt as soon as he talks who it is. And it's like that with us, guys. It's like that thing with being a light, that it doesn't matter if it's you. It doesn't matter if it's me. It doesn't matter if it's any of us in this room who claim to know Jesus. It doesn't matter what suit he's using. It should be by the things that we say and come out of our mouths and the way that we act and the way that we treat people, that when people look at us, they don't see us, they see Jesus. Does that make sense? We're such a light that everywhere we go, we're just overflowing onto people, and Jesus is seen no matter what we do. So I wanted to let you know a little bit about what that verse is saying this morning, but before we really jump into things, I also want to let you know a couple things. Well, I should say this. We are meant to be light, and that's something I don't think that people understand the importance of what that means. And when I say be a light, I'm talking about evangelism. And I don't think people understand the importance of really what that means, but I want to go through this with you this morning, and it's a little bit of a side note to what I really am going to talk about this morning, but I hope you'll hang with me because I'll be circling back around to it, okay? But there are 5 main purposes why God put us on this earth. So if you ever wonder what we're here for, we're going to talk about it this morning here really quick. 5 main purposes, and there's a lot of reasons that God put us on this planet, but they usually distill down into one of these 5 categories. And so I want to go through those with you this morning, and if you're taking notes, this might be a good place to throw down some notes. The first purpose that God created us for was worship. We were designed to worship God, and that's why, if you'll ever notice, people that don't know Jesus are always searching for something. They're always giving their time, they're always giving their money, they're always giving their passion and their energy to something, whether it's their career, whether it's fame, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a person. They're always giving themselves to something, aren't they? Do you know why that is? It's because we were created to worship God. And because God created us to do that, we're always longing for it. And so people that don't know who Jesus is or they haven't found the right object of their worship are always trying to worship something. And so they're misguided, and maybe it's a car, or maybe it's hunting, or maybe it's shopping, or whatever it is. But they're misguided, and they worship these other things. They give their time, their talent, their attention, their focus to these other things because they don't understand that they were meant to worship God, but they were. And so naturally, as humans, we don't even have to try. We want to worship something. And so that's one of our created purposes on this earth, is to worship God. Now, we understand and we have found Jesus, and we know that worshiping God is one of our highest callings, and so we know who to worship. But if you understand, people are designed and they're created to worship. Number 2 reason that we were put upon this earth is for fellowship. You could insert the word relationship there. Ever notice how great it is to hang out with believers? Ever notice how great it is just to get together with friends and talk and have a good time and just enjoy each other's company? You ever wonder why the bars are full on Friday and Saturday nights? Is it just because there's alcohol there? No, not really, because there's alcohol in the grocery stores. People could go to the grocery stores and go home and drink by themselves, but they don't want to do that. Why? They want to have the camaraderie. They want to have the community that they feel when they're in a bar. Why? Why do they do that? Because we were created for relationship. We were created to live life with other people, and we call it in the church fellowship, right? Hanging out with other people, doing life with other people. And so we naturally want to do that. We naturally want to gather with people. We naturally want to hang around with people. Even people that are introverted want to have relationships with other people. It's one of the purposes we're put on this earth. Number 3 reason or purpose would be discipleship, or you could insert the word growth. You ever notice or wonder why there's so many life coaches, self-help books, motivational speakers? I didn't look up the numbers, but I imagine the self-help industry is probably a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar a year industry. It's because we want to make ourselves better, don't we? That's why we're reading blogs, and that's why we're listening to podcasts, and that's why we're reading books that help us to become better people. It's because we want to be better. I think at the core of everybody's being, they want to be better than they are. And there's a reason for that. It's because God built it into our DNA, spiritually speaking, that we want to grow as people. We call it in the church, we call it discipleship. It's one of the purposes God made us to be on this earth. The fourth purpose, service. Do you ever have that good feeling when you help somebody? You know, when you do something for somebody and it feels really, really good? You ever get that? You know, there's a show that has been now canceled, but it was on the air several years ago called Extreme Makeover Home Edition. And it was the show where they would go in and they'd find a deserving couple or family, and they would demolish their house and they'd rebuild their house and they would give them cars and all kinds of stuff. And people loved that show. You know why? Because it felt good. It was because it was people giving back to people. It's because we were meant to serve the Lord. We were meant to serve other people. And so when we serve other people, we get that good feeling because it's what we were created to do. It was one of our purposes, and it's a natural thing for us to want to do. Now, sometimes we get caught up in our own world, but if we look outside of ourselves and we serve other people, it feels good. Number 5 reason that God placed us on this earth is evangelism. Evangelism. Winning people to Jesus, letting God use you to influence someone else's life and draw them to him. Now, I understand this. When we say the word evangelism in the church, I think a lot of people get really scared. When I say the word evangelism, the introverts want to bolt for the doors, right? Because they know it's coming. I'm going to have to talk to people about Jesus that I don't know, and it's going to be scary, and I'm going to get questions. Can I say that doing evangelism, now think about it this way, and this is why I shared the 5 purposes with you. The 4 purposes that I mentioned, worship, fellowship, discipleship, and service. Those are things that come naturally to us. So why would the 5th purpose be any different than the other 4 purposes? Why would evangelism feel so unnatural, and why would it be so hard, and why would it be so overwhelming that most Christians never even attempt it? Well, I want to take some of the blame for that. I think that we as a church maybe, and not just specifically our church, but the church by and large, I think that we have made evangelism this concept that's really scary to people, because we pigeonholed evangelism to be this thing where you have to know a bunch of Bible verses, and you have to pre-know a script, and you have to know every single answer to every question everyone's going to have, and you have to talk to people that don't know Jesus that you probably don't know. How many know that's one form of evangelism, but that's not evangelism. Evangelism, what I want to share with you today is it should be as natural as breathing. It should be as natural as those other 4 things when we live it out. It's not hard to do evangelism. Even if you're an introvert, it's not hard to be an evangelist. It's not hard to be the light. It's one of our reasons for being. But I wanted you to understand this morning how vitally important it is to really be the light, and how evangelism is really incredibly important. I wanted you to know this morning that God placed you strategically where you're at, for you strategically and specifically to reach people where you are. Do you know that making money at your job is secondary, and evangelism at your job is a primary purpose of you being there? Did you know that every morning when you go to work, or maybe for students you go to school, that's like taking a missions trip every single day? I hope that when you step into your job, you're not just putting in your time so that you can get a paycheck, trading hours for dollars. Or students, when you go to school, you're not just going and you're not just going to school because it's something that you have to do to get to the next part of your life that you really want to. I hope you see it the way that I would want you to see it as, and Jesus would want you to see it as an opportunity. That when you walk into that job, that you might get the opportunity that day to change someone's eternity by the way that you treat them, by the things that you say, by the way that you act around them. I hope that you might look at them and say, man, not only might I be able to change someone's eternity, but maybe an entire family, maybe entire generations of families will be transformed because of something that God allows me to be a part of at my workplace or at school today. I hope you guys look at that. And I hope that excites you, and I hope that you look at your job that way. And by the way, you get a paycheck, that's just a bonus. Or students, you get school lunch, that's just a bonus. All right? I hope that you see every day as an opportunity, because evangelism is so important. You know, we get so caught up in our mindset of what we want to do, and we get so caught up in our little worlds, but man, there's so much more beyond just us. And there's so much that God wants to do. And I hope that as you look at your job that way, or you look at what you're doing that way, or wherever you're going, I hope it excites you, and I hope it gives you a new life for what you're doing. All right, so let's get to the meat of this today. So now that obviously we know that we're a light, let's answer the question this morning, what does it mean to be a light? Well, the way I want to answer that question this morning is by actually looking at the physical properties of light to answer the question, what does it mean to be a light? Well, what does light do? Number one, light affects its surroundings, okay? This should be a no-brainer. Now, without light, science tells us we won't be able to see. I tell you, anyone who's been in the dark knows that you won't be able to see without light, right? Again, I could give you a very scientific explanation, but the fact of the matter is you can't see without light. You have things, let's say you go into a room and you've got objects there that can be seen. You have a brain that can interpret those signals of what sight is telling you, but until you actually throw light into that room and it's able to bounce off those objects and come back to your brain through your eyes, you cannot comprehend that those things are there. You can do it by touch, but you can't do it by sight. So light is something that affects the world around us. My question to you is this: how are you affecting the people that are around you? You know, Pastor Donnie mentioned our book of the month is a book called Love Does by an author named Bob Goff. And I've shared a couple stories from his life, but this morning I wanted to share a story with you. Bob was in Uganda, and I think it was when he was on his trip with his kids. He took a trip with his kids around the world, and they met a bunch of leaders from all over the world. And I think he was there in Uganda for 2 weeks. And while he was in Uganda, he asked the question, what can I do to help? Because it's a third world nation, and there's parts of Uganda that are a mess. And so he said, what can I do to help? Now, Bob's a lawyer, and so he started looking at his legal options. Do they need anything legally? Can my skills help their situation? What he found was there was a bunch of teenage boys in the prisons in Uganda, because all it takes in Uganda, because the system is differently, all it takes is for one person to make an accusation to another person, and then they get thrown in jail until they're able to get a trial, which in Uganda doesn't come for 3 or 4 years. So you have all these boys. You'd have like dads, for example, who know these boys are wanting to date their daughters and they don't want them, and so all they have to do is throw an accusation at them, and they end up in jail. How many fathers would like to be able to have that power here in America? You don't. But they would throw these accusations, and so you have all these teenagers sitting in jail, and they're being raised by a hardened prison system. And of course, when you're raised around that and you're in those years where you're influenced, you're going to go out and you're going to commit more crime probably. So Bob said, what can I do? Well, he found about 200 cases of boys who had been thrown in jail, and he found a couple of judges that would be willing to take those cases and they would be willing to go to trial with them. And so he took 200 cases to jail, and by the end of it, 93% of the boys that they took through this process got released and got sent back to their families. And you're like, wow, that's amazing, right? He's affecting the world around him. And you're probably saying to yourself, well, okay, Pastor Jed, here you go again. This is some grand idea of what evangelism means. It's I have to be a lawyer, and I have to go to Uganda, and I have to. I hope you didn't miss the point. The point is this. The point is the question that Bob asked. And he said, what can I do for the people here? That's all it is. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to go on a missions trip. You don't have to go to Uganda, because God has placed you in and amongst a circle of people that maybe nobody else in the world will be able to reach aside from you. And the only question that you need to ask yourself is, what can I do to help the people that I'm around? What can I do to make someone's life better today? Instead of thinking about your life, instead of thinking about what do I have to do when I go home? What are we going to have for dinner? Okay, what are the kids' schedules? And when's my next vacation? And how are we going to save money for this, that, and the other thing? Because I understand we do those things. I just don't think so many times that we don't think about the people that are around us. We don't think that God has put us in the middle of a strategic missions opportunity. And all we have to do is say, what can I do to make their life better? And that can be really, really simple. That can be as simple as an encouraging word. That can be as simple as asking someone how they're doing and engaging with them in conversation. I mean, guys, that can be so easy, so easy. And you know what? God's going to use your unique personality. If you're not the extrovert person who likes to stand up on a desk and preach, then God's going to use you to send a card to somebody when they're going through a tough time. That's as easy as it gets. That's making an impact on the world around you. 1 Peter 3:15 says this. I use this verse often if you ever hear me speak. But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope that you have, but do it with gentleness and respect. So this verse implies something, right? It implies that you're getting asked questions. Why would you get asked questions? Because your life looks differently. So maybe for you, it's just letting your life shine. Maybe it's for you, it's some of the things you don't do that make you shine and stand out from everybody else, so that when someone is ready, they'll ask you a question about why do you do that? Why do you live that way? Why do you treat people the way that you do? Then you're ready with an answer. I want you to do me a favor for a second. I want you to get your phones out. We're going to use them here in just a second. Everybody get your phones out. If you got smartphones, if you got a dumb phone, leave it in your pocket. Not going to work. You know, I've heard a lot of Christians say to me over the years, they'll come and they'll say, man, Pastor Jared, I just envy you so much. I wish I could work in a church, on a church staff where you're just around Christians all day and you know, you're just around believers all day. And I'm like, around Christians all day? I'm like, you know I work with Pastor Donnie, right? Like, no, I don't. No, but they say that, or they'll say, I've even heard someone say, I've even had a couple of people over the years come up to me and say, Pastor Jared, I got a great idea. I'm going to start a business and I'm going to have only Christian employees. It's going to be awesome. You know what my response is to that? That's a horrible, horrible idea. It really is. It's a really bad idea, and I want to show you why. Take your phones out. If you know how to turn your flashlights on, turn your flashlights on. For you older people, if you have someone younger sitting next to you, maybe you want to have them help you. Turn your flashlights on. I want you to hold them up high. All right, that's kind of cool, right? Kind of cool. I feel like I should be taking a picture of this for an Instagram post. So that's kind of cool. All right, I want you to turn them off. Brad, I want you to go ahead and take the lights completely down in this room. All right, now I want you to take your cell phones and I want you to hold them up. Now that's impressive, right? That's impressive. Go ahead and turn the lights back on. Do you know why having a business where you only hire Christian people is a horrible idea? It's because light shines the best in dark places. You know, I could fill this room, and we just saw it. I just showed you an illustration. I could fill this room with a bunch of lamps, a bunch of lampstands. I could turn the lights on. I could fill it with lamps, and it's okay. I mean, it's fine. You could, but I could, if I filled this place with 1,000 lamps, I could take away one lamp, and no one would ever know the difference. But if I took all the lamps out of this place, and I had all the lights shut off, and it was the middle of the night, so it's pitch black in here, and I put one lamp in the center of the room, and I let it shine, how many of you know it would have maximum impact in a dark place? You gotta go where the darkness is if you want to shine the brightest. You know, I used to have people say, or I've heard people say too, from years and years of just being in ministry and being in the Christian world. There's Christian bands that will go. They'll play in bars and they'll go play in clubs. And they'll play in these venues that aren't great, to be honest. Or maybe they'll tour with these secular bands. And I've heard a lot of Christians come down on those artists. And honestly, this morning, I'm not here to defend them because I don't know their motivation in their hearts. And maybe it is a bad idea for some of them. But you know what? Who else is going to reach those bands for Jesus? Those people in the clubs, some of those people would never set foot in a church. They would never set foot within a mile of a Christian. But yet, here's a band, and again, I don't know the motivations of their heart, but here's someone who's willing to say, yes, I'll go in there and I'll be a light in the midst of the darkness. And guess what? They're shining the brightest, and I guarantee you they probably have opportunities like crazy to meet people and to share Jesus' love with them in different ways. Mark 2:17 says, when Jesus heard this, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they're righteous, but those who know that they are sinners. You know, when Jesus was here on this earth and walking around physically, the people that he hung out with did not have good reputations. And he got a lot of flack from that from the religious people. There were a lot of people that he hung out with that were called drunkards, they were prostitutes, they were called sinners and tax collectors. Why did Jesus do that? Because they were the ones who needed the light, and his light was shining brightest in the midst of their darkness. And so I want to follow his example, and I want to challenge you and encourage you to follow his example. And what does that mean for you? Well, that means don't shy away from dark places. That means if you're in a place where you're surrounding yourself with just Christians, you need to go find yourself some friends who don't know Jesus. And don't tell them that's why you're friending them. Just go find them, okay? I want to be friends with you because you don't know Jesus and you're going to hell. No, I don't want you to tell them that. I want you to go find them, and I want you to love them, and I want you to shine bright in the midst of whatever that looks like. Maybe for you it's joining a club or finding a hobby where you can get involved with some people. I don't know, but don't shy away from dark places. Don't go run and hide. Even if you're at work, and maybe you're a person who's got cubicles, don't go run to your cubicle and just hide because of the darkness that's around you. That's an old mentality of the church, and it's bogus. We need to stand there right in the middle of those conversations and be light in the middle of those conversations because we'll shine bright. And you know what's really cool is we're going to attract people to us and to Jesus when we do that. The third thing I want to tell you today about light is that light needs a power source. Needs a power source. Whether it's a spark, electricity, gas, how many know light just doesn't happen on its own? You can have a lamp and you can have a bulb and you can have everything you need, but until you plug it into the outlet, it's not really going to do anything for you. I did some scientific research because I felt like I should do something sciencey in this message, and I missed my other two opportunities. So I looked up a little bit about the sun and how the sun works. And the sun is actually a huge giant ball with enough nuclear fusion reactions taking place every second to produce as much energy as a 1 trillion megaton bomb. I mean, that's pretty amazing. There's a ton of energy in the sun. In fact, our scientists are trying to figure out how to replicate that kind of energy so that we can have a power source that's never going to go out. But we too, as Christians, as we're taking a look at light and what that means, we too, as Christians, according to John 15:5, need to be plugged into a source in order to light the world and be a light that Jesus calls us to. John 15:5, you've probably heard this verse. He says, "Yes, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you'll produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." I told you before, this evangelism thing is not hard. Being a light is not a hard thing to do. Here's what you have to do. You have to stay plugged into Jesus. You have to have a relationship with him that's living and active. You have to be seeking him on a regular basis. And when you do, guess what's going to happen? Guess what happens when you plant a tree in good soil and you give it all the water and sunlight and all the things it needs? It's going to produce fruit. And what is that fruit? Well, that fruit can be different things, but one of the things, some of that fruit is the fruit of the Holy Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. And some of the other fruit of that is actually lives changed because of the way that we live and the relationship that we have with Jesus. So it's a matter of being a natural byproduct of being plugged into the vine. It's not hard. It's not hard. We just have to show up where there's darkness, and we have to be plugged in to the source. And when we do that, evangelism is going to take place. And I'm telling you what, you don't need to memorize scripture, although that would be great if you should have some scripture memorized. You don't have to memorize, and we talked to you about memorizing the Romans Road, and you should have that, and that'd be great, but you don't have to have the Romans Road memorized. You don't have to have this great speech prepared. You don't have to be able to debate the points of evolution to talk to someone about Jesus Christ. You show up, and you plug into the source, and you let your life be a light to everyone that's around you. Now, does that mean talking to some people sometimes? Yeah. Does that mean having to answer some questions sometimes when they come up? Yeah, it does. But part of what we do here is try to equip you with the tools to do the work of the ministry. And one of the tools that we have to equip you with, we've talked about it before, is we have these cards. They're called truelife.org cards. And it's a card that if you get into a conversation and someone's got questions, and I'm not talking about a debate necessarily, because debates really, trust me, they don't get you anywhere. You're not going to change their mind. They're not going to change yours, and everybody's going to get upset about it. I'm talking about people that are seeking God. If you run across those people and they have legitimate questions, you can give them one of these cards. Maybe they have a question on evolution, let's say. You can give them one of these cards, and all of these topics, they'll go to this website, truelife.org, and on this website, they'll see tons of videos on tons of the most, maybe the hot button topics of our day, like abuse, and there's a lot of different ones on there, abortion, and they can get answers to those questions. They can hear people's stories who've actually been through a lot of those things. They're powerful testimonies, and you can have a tool that we put in your hands to be able to do this. So the ushers or the hosts are going to have those at the end of the service. They'll hand them out to you. So make sure you grab those on the way out. That's just a tool that we give you. That's not your evangelism. You don't just walk around the office and just, here you go, and just hand those out. I don't want you to do that. But I want you, when people are engaging you in conversation, I want you to be able to use that as a tool for evangelism. But guys, listen, it is so easy. It is so easy to produce fruit. You just stay plugged into Jesus, and then you just sit and you shine in front of everybody else. And when you shine like that, you're going to get those questions that we talked about in 1 Peter 3:15. Why do you act that way? Why don't you do these things? Why do you do these things? Well, let me tell you about it. It's because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. And guys, you wouldn't believe how many people are open to hear what you have to say when you're living your life out in front of them. And the best part is it's completely and utterly natural because it's just a byproduct of a relationship lived with Jesus Christ. Remember how I told you at the beginning of my message that I hate the darkness of winter? And how some people suffer from seasonal affective disorder from lack of light, and the cure is light therapy. Well, there's a lot of people, your coworkers, friends, and family, who are suffering from a lot of different things because they're living in darkness and they're longing for the light therapy that you guys can give. And that's what you are. You guys are light therapy to a depressed world that does not know Jesus. So go out there and shine and be a light to those people who need a light. Let me pray for you this morning. Bow your heads, close your eyes. Father, thank you for this group of people. God, I thank you, Lord, that in this room there's an incredible amount of light. Father, I pray, God, that in this room this morning we've dispelled some of the myths of evangelism. And I pray, God, as people leave this place this morning, that they'll leave this place knowing that this is something that they can completely do. And God, it's completely as natural as breathing. Lord, I pray that you give them opportunity.